Well, fetch, sit, stay, and roll over. If you ever have tried to teach your dog those commands, you know it can be a tedious job.
Yeah, so now imagine teaching your dog to use words and phrases to ask for what they want and share with you how they feel. Well, one of the largest studies of its kind is underway to prove dogs can communicate. Marty Saltz has the details.
Meet Stella, a spunky blue heeler Catahoula mix. Her dog mom, Christina Hunger, a speech-language pathologist, is making headlines around the world after teaching Stella to use augmentative and alternative communication devices to express herself.
Oh, I love you too.
Stella's learned 50 words and can create phrases up to 5 words long, but Stella is not the only dog finding their voice.
Who is good?
UCSD cognitive scientist Federico Rossano is leading the largest animal communication citizen science study ever done. It's called How They Can Talk and involves 6,000 animals in 47 countries.
What we are trying to do is trying to understand to what degree they can communicate more complex thoughts. The first times I saw them putting together 3-4 buttons that sound like a sentence, I was pretty impressed and shocked.
Pull outside, good girl.
What amazed me more was when they would follow up on that, because then it really felt like they were actually engaging in a conversation.
Eat. Well done, eat.
The other thing that I thought was remarkable was really to see them communicating about the needs of somebody else.
What's going on with Hallie? Yeah, she's having trouble walking.
The time it takes for a dog to learn to talk depends on how much time their human puts into teaching them. But Rossano believes the time spent could lead us all to a better understanding of our furry friends. I'm Marty Salt reporting.
So cool. So cats are also included in the study, although Professor Rossano says they are much harder to train. We also asked if one breed was a better learner than others. He said their study involved a lot of mixed breeds, but border collies, poodles, and terriers seem to be all of the quick learners, with some learning not just dozens, but hundreds of words. But again, it all depends on how much time their owners put into teaching them.